Democratic Congressman from New Jersey, Bill Pascrell. Congressman Pascrell is a member of the Congressional Ukrainian Caucus. Congressman, thank you for being here on this day.
Good to be here, Richard.
As we talk about this issue. And now, as you look at New Jersey, it has a very large Ukrainian-American population. What has been the reaction to this?
I've been meeting with the Ukrainian delegation from my area for the past 5-6 months. I mean, this situation just didn't start yesterday or the day before. We know from the Orange Revolution several years back that Ukraine wants peace and Ukraine wants to be one united nation. We've seen what's happened with Crimea. This is an extension of Russian power and authority. I mean, when the question is asked, who's in charge? The president of Ukraine. He's been duly elected, and Russia is violating the sovereignty of a sovereign nation. And that's where we begin. We don't want to make enemies of the Russians. But on the other hand, if we listen to our Ambassador Powers at the UN the other day, Rich, she was very clear and very succinct about what our responsibilities are and what Russia should take responsibility for and not simply walk away. They are hiding in the shadows, as you just heard.
Congressman, as you heard from Jim Masada, who was reporting from Ukraine just about a month or two ago, and he was going through the process, and I remember speaking to him on camera doing his reporting on post-election. They thought things might get better. We are now post-election. Do you think things are going to get better?
Well, I think that they could get worse, they could get better, depending upon how the Ukrainian government responds to this. There are guns not put there by the Ukrainian government in the eastern part of Ukraine. That has meant death. And now we see what could be an accident, what could have been an intentional shooting down of an airplane. 80 children of the 298 killed. And this is a preposterous situation. And I believe that this could lead to even more dangerous situations that would engulf the entire area.
It could go either way, is what you're saying.
We have those hotspots in the world, the Mideast, et cetera, et cetera. One stupid move, and we could get into a world war. The president is committed to no boots on the ground. On the other hand, we have a responsibility.
I want to play a bit of sound from Congressman Peter King, a member of the House Intelligence Committee. He says Russia must be held accountable. Let's listen to that, and I'll get your reaction.
Sure.
Russia has to be ultimately responsible, at the very least, for criminal negligence. And in the world of international politics and diplomacy, they have to bear responsibility. If you're transferring weapons of this magnitude to a rebel group, you have to be responsible for the consequences.
First of all, do you agree with him? There's also criticisms coming from the right. Peter King is saying that the president, had he handled this differently, we may not have had to address what we see right now happening outside of Donetsk.
Well, it's very easy to say if the president handled it differently. If the president became even stronger than what I believe where he's at this particular point, I think it risks us getting into a situation where we will have to show some military force in the area. We don't want that. I don't think that helps the situation. Look, I'm a good friend of Peter King's. We agree on a lot of things. We were on Homeland Security for a long period of time together. I deeply respect his position. But those who are going to rattle the cage at this particular time better be understanding that it could only get worse, and the cage could even be tighter, and we'll never get out of it. So I'm saying that we should have strong sanctions, not meaningless, not tooth sanctions, as I would call them. And I think that the UN has to handle this and respond to this. I think they have to speak to the UN as well as the Russians. And Putin can be silent and hide as long as he wants. But the UN has a responsibility, unless they want each nation to be on its own. And we don't want that. That's why we have a UN.
Very complex problem here. It was very intractable there for a while. Is this a new opening, you think?
I think it is. And I think, some good can come out of this. Cooler heads must prevail. But I can't think of how you show remorse to the families of these 298 people. It's a difficult situation, and we need to understand this. Now, the European countries have not stepped up to the plate as we have. We're asking them to do the same thing to Russia, to ask for Russians to sanction much of what Russia is doing. Yet we know they depend upon for oil, Russian oil. We understand that. But you got to step up to the plate here, or else where is the European Union?
The winter is coming soon. Does that mean that is the, if you will, the door when it closes, when we see winter hit?
Yes, and Ukraine is a very important part of this, if you know how Russian oil flows. And I think this is very good. I have a tremendous amount of respect in President Poroshenko. I think that he has a good sense of what's going on here. His government doesn't have exactly clean hands in what was going on in eastern Ukraine. Much of the East feels it's been ignored. And isn't that familiar sounding to you, whether we're talking about Iraq or whether we're talking about some other Syria? When people feel ignored and left out, and particularly if they're speaking mostly Russian on the eastern part of Ukraine, you can understand this developing. Doesn't it give an excuse to shoot planes out of the air, and it doesn't give an excuse to kill people in a way that doesn't allow for life and death to understand and go day to day.
Congressman Pascrell, thank you so much for stopping by. Have a good weekend.
I'll try, Richard.
All right, appreciate it. Up next, the